And this podcast is brought to you by the Repost Network. Repost Network. Monetize your SoundCloud content. Sign up today at repostnetwork.com. This is the power of pro wrestling. A podcast by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. On this edition of the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast, we're going to be talking WCW's existence if the internet was more prevalent. We're going to give our top 5 moments, and we're going to end the show with some bold predictions. Next on the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast. And welcome to the show. This is Robert Red, and for this podcast, I'm going to be joined today by my co-host, Mr. Cornbread, Chris Heineken. How you doing, Mr. Heineken?
I'm in the house. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Well, we've got an action-packed show for you today. Like you heard at the beginning of the podcast, we're actually going to get this started with our discussion question. And our discussion question today, Mr. Heineken, I'm going to let you start off after I tell you the question. We're actually going to be talking about WCW's existence. Now, the question that we're going to discuss for the next few minutes is, would WCW still be in existence today if the internet was more prevalent when it closed its doors in 2001? So kind of give me your answer and kind of your reason why.
As tough as this question is, and granted, you know, with the impact of social media and the internet and all that, if WCW would have had the right people rather than it being Turner-based, I think, yes, WCW will still be in business. But, you know, internet's here. Sometimes it can be here today, gone tomorrow. But the one thing that has more of a lasting impact is how you successfully run a company. And because, I mean, I'm not looking at storylines here or anything like that. I'm looking at it from a business perspective. Only if WCW would have had the right business people that are invested and want to see the product succeed, then WCW will still be in business, and it still would have been in business today. That's just my opinion. What do you think?
Despite the people running it, if the internet was more prevalent back in 2001 when it closed its doors, do you think it would still be around today? That's the question that I'm posing.
No.
So you said the internet would have no impact on WCW still being around whatsoever if it was more prevalent.
It will have a little bit of impact, but it's more of what goes down business-wise behind the scenes, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm going to say, yes, WCW would still be in business if the internet was more prevalent back in 2001 when it was closed its doors. I even had this discussion with my cousin when we were watching TLC this past Sunday. Hey, the reason why I feel WCW would still be in existence is I feel TNA is kind of like the spiritual successor to WCW. It's like its offspring, its child. So, and I feel TNA has found way after way after way to stay afloat. Like after they lost their Fox Sportsnet deal, they kind of did some internet shows and kept Impact going until they could get Spike TV. So that's why I'm saying that WCW would still be in business today if the internet was more prevalent at the time, just for the simple fact of the whole reason. And WCW, you had the merger of Time Warner and AOL with Turner. And I know that's the reason why WCW closed. But you have to remember, Eric Bischoff was going to buy WCW, and like I think Fusion Media Ventures or something was going to be like his partners and stuff. And the reason they backed out of the deal was there wasn't going to be a place that aired a show. So I feel WCW would still be in existence if the internet was still around, because if you look today, 2015, Vince McMahon says the pay-per-view market is dead. So what did he do? He adjusted it. He's put out the WWE Network. So I feel if WCW had the same luxury back in 2001, it would still be in existence today, just for the simple fact of they would have had a platform to air the show, and WCW would have kept going in some form. So that's why I'm saying, yes, WCW would still be in business today if the internet was more prevalent back in 2001.
But you also have to realize this is a television-driven industry. And because of that, granted, I know you say yes, and I know I would say no, simply for the fact that if you use the internet to at least get you going until you can get the next television deal done, then I would say yes. But look at the streaming then and look at the streaming now. It's a big difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the technology is a lot better. That's what I'm saying. If they had the technology,
but it's a television-driven industry.
Like I'm saying, if they had the technology that we have today back in 2001, I think WCW would still be in business. And to add to your point, I'm going to add that to it. Like I said with TNA, they used the internet for that short period of time before going to Spike TV. So they could have done that and potentially got a new TV deal to air WCW because you would have had the money to back it. They wouldn't necessarily had to been associated with Turner. They could have had some other network after a few months to see if their shows were successful or not. So, I mean, obviously, I feel WCW would still be in business if the internet, like it is today, would have been around in 2001.
But also look at this from this perspective. Even while Turner owned WCW, they still had to go out and purchase television time, and they never purchased a network. That's I mean, granted, you may have mentioned TNA, but put Ring of Honor in that perspective. After they lost the deal with what is now known as Access TV, formerly HDNet, look at what they did. Technically, they kept renting shows. They didn't do a whole lot of stuff internet-based with the exception of our pay-per-views. Because they only ran 2-hour internet pay-per-views right before they got the deal with Sinclair Broadcasting. Especially full-time. And look at what that has done for them. That's why I say any versions of means is different. But if the streaming would have been a lot better, or if you would have had somebody that was willing to invest and would say, hey, we got this company here that says we want to sign the deal. See if you can try to do any and everything to make your internet streaming a lot better rather than just the audio stream, which is what they had back then, compared to the video stream. Mm-hmm. If you could do your video stream and upgrade it to make it really, really better, then I would put my answer at yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole purpose of the question. But we've run out of time for this segment. We're going to take a short commercial break. And right after this commercial break, you and me are going to give our top 5 moments this week in professional wrestling. But we're going to go to a quick break, guys. Stick with us. We'll be back right after this.
This is John Ray, and you're listening to the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast.
And we're back with the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is Robert Red, and I'm still joined by Mr. Cornbread Chris Heineken.
Let's get on down to it, the top 5 moments.
Yes, this is our segment where we talk about our top 5 favorite moments of the week. And as always, we're going to count in reverse order, where we're going to start number 5 and go back and forth between the two, and we're going to count up until we get to our number 1 moment. So I'm going to start it off with the top 5 moments. Raw, I have to praise. Raw has been better this week than it has been in several weeks, maybe even months. So a lot of my top 5 this week actually does come from Raw. There were a lot of problems with Raw, but I still enjoyed it from an entertainment value. It was great. My number 5, to start it off, the Wyatt family, Team ECW in Philadelphia, the ECW Extreme Rules match. It wasn't an ECW Extreme Rules match, but they just called it Extreme Rules match. Very physical contest. It was good to see Rhino, Dreamer, and the Dudleys take on the Wyatt family in kind of an Extreme Rules match for that Philly crowd to kind of make them happy. It was very physical. I liked the Dreamer driver. I think you called it the Spicoli driver when we were watching it.
Yes, it's Spicoli driver.
On Monday off the stage for the table that Dreamer gave to Strowman. I mean, just it was violent and action-packed. It wasn't over-the-top great. It didn't get me over-the-top excited about it, but I did enjoy it. It was a good moment this week in wrestling, so that's kind of why I put it at my number 5. It wasn't over-the-top good, but it was still a good moment, so I had to put it on my top 5. So I'll let you go to your number 5 moment.
I'm going to stick with that, even though technically to me it should have been number 4 or number 3, but that comes later. I'm going to stick with that because I gave that a 10 on my scale for this reason. One, it wasn't so much of, granted, it was a Philly-style reunion as far as ECW is concerned, but it was the passing of the torch, in my opinion. Because, granted, you may have had it passed down to you from The Undertaker and Kane. Then you may have had the little competitive matches with John Cena and that little feud. And now you get that passed down to you is almost like, hey, you're the guys that we could truly take serious. So that's why I gave it a 10 all across the board for both teams. It was a great match. It was a 10. It popped.
Yeah, and I mean, it really helped to get the Wyatt family over. You had a bunch of established guys that are ECW that we talked about, and we even talked about in our Ring of Honor prediction shows, them going back to the 2300 arena and how historic it is. So those guys still have merit and value. So for the Wyatt family and the Team ECW's kind of forte, an Extreme Rules match to beat those guys, it kind of gave them credibility as a faction, which they have strongly been lacking for the longest time.
But you have to give credit where credit is due to Bubba Ray and Devon, willing to help the young talent go. And here's number 4. What is your number 4 on your list?
My number 4, I'm kind of sad that I didn't put more Ring of Honor on my list, but I did like
It's the beauty of wrestling.
I like Dalton Castle. He's been good, but what really got me excited about Ring of Honor television when I watched it for this week was the Jay Lethal Jerry Lynn confrontation. That really is what sold me on Final Battle, just to bring out Jerry Lynn and have the confrontation for Jay Lethal. I don't know why you brought out Lynn, since he's probably long since retired in professional wrestling, and to do this, but it made for a great confrontation between Jay Lethal and Jerry Lynn, and it was a good moment to watch on Ring of Honor television, and it helped to sell me on Final Battle, which at the time of the recording is tonight. It's on pay-per-view, PlayStation Network, Flips app. I'll give it a cheap plug. So watch it. If time you're listening to this podcast, I think will be after the pay-per-view, order the replay or watch it online. Support Ring of Honor. But that was my number 4 moment. Jay Lethal, the Jerry Lynn confrontation was just great. I enjoyed it. It got me excited about Final Battle.
I think just to add on to your point, while you have it as number 4, I think there's a bigger point in the reason why they brought Jerry Lynn out there. It wasn't so much of the Lethal and Lynn confrontation. It was putting more focus and more attention to the Ring of Honor World Championship. My number 4, and I will stick, and actually, this is too tough to call. My number 4, I'm throwing it to Ring of Honor television, and it's not the Lethal Lynn confrontation. It's actually the tag team main event, RPG Vice versus ACH and Matt Sydal. That was close to a 10 for these reasons. Not only just the quickness and speed, not only just the teamwork, but the fact that I got this upset city for this reason. ACH and Matt Sydal, granted, they're great singles wrestlers. No question about it. But to be a big-time marquee team at RPG Vice, known as Roppongi Vice, that's upset city because that's a legit team. That's a team that can literally compete for any championship around the world because they've already been IWGP Junior Tag Champs. So I've got upset city for ACH and Matt Sydal beating RPG Vice is my number 4. What about number 3? What's your pick for number 3?
My number 3 is actually interesting. I'm going back to WWE, and for Raw, like I said, I'm praising Raw. There's a lot of great stuff that was on Raw, and I think a lot of people will agree with me that Raw this week was better, so I'm jumping back. I believe this was the first official match of the night, and it was the Dolph Ziggler-Dean Ambrose. Good match, good contest. 2 internet darlings. Dean Ambrose coming through the indies and just Dolph Ziggler being a great worker. Great match. It's kind of sad that Kevin Owens had to come in and interrupt it, but I know that was to propel the story forward with him and Dean Ambrose, and then having Ziggler get involved and maybe teasing that there's going to be a triple threat for the Intercontinental Championship maybe here in the future. Or just a great moment, great match. So that's kind of why I put it at number 3.
My number 3 would be, wow. It's just too much to call. As far as Raw, as far as all 3 are concerned, it's just too much to call. My number 3, I will have to say, comes from Impact Wrestling. The Final 4 segment between the Final 4 competitors that will be competing on Pop Television live on January 5th for the vacant TNA World Championship. And that's, of course, Lashley, Matt Hardy, EC3, and Eric Young. The thing that truly sold me on that whole segment, that Final 4 segment, and the matches were great on the program. The Future 4 8-man tag and the Bobby Roode win in the elimination match. The thing that truly sold me on the Final 4 segment was Eric Young. Granted, Bobby Lashley, cool and smooth. EC3, opportunistic. Matt Hardy, passionate. But Eric Young sold it for me. He sold me the reason why I should tune in to Pop Television, because Eric Young has grown up, and we watch him grow up. And I've talked about this with you off the air. Eric Young has grown up since 2004. He really has. He's come a long way. But what he did sold it for me. And the video package that they had on all four competitors, in particular, Eric Young, truly sold it for me. And I'm waiting to see what happens on Pop Television on Tuesday night. That's number 3. You're number 2, because we get down to the nitty-gritty.
Well, since we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, I have to go back to Raw, or actually I should stick with Raw, and my number 2 is the Stephanie confrontation there at the beginning of the show with Roman Reigns. It was just very well done. You were excited after what happened at TLC. Like I said, there was a lot of problems with Raw, just the whole fact of Stephanie should have came out and fired him, but I liked the whole confrontation with Roman Reigns. She said, I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to wait till my dad gets here and let him fire you. So, I mean, it was just a great moment, her slapping Roman Reigns, and I liked Roman Reigns. He was being presented in a way that he needed to be presented. He doesn't need to be presented as an underdog. He's a big, tough, muscular guy. He needs to be a badass, if I can say that, and he needs to be that tough guy image, and like kind of what he said. And Stephanie said that he was a disgrace, and then he kind of was like, no, I'm not the disgrace. You're a disgrace. Your husband's a disgrace. Everyone's a disgrace. And kind of just let it felt like he was more organic and natural in the role, which a lot of wrestling people talk about being organic and just natural in that role. Oh, so I mean, I felt that Roman Reigns did a very good job of that, and just Stephanie slapping him, and just the whole segment was great.
8 slaps total.
Yeah, 8 slaps. I mean, it was just great how it was done, and it built excitement and anticipation for what was going to happen later on in the night. So that's why I put it as my number 2. It was exciting. It was a great moment for Monday Night Raw. Another great segment.
Well, that may have been your number 2. My number 2 was the pop that Vince McMahon got when he hit the stage in Philly. The Vince McMahon segment when he called out Roman Reigns, and then Sheamus interrupt and literally laid it all on the line. The fact that Vince McMahon literally came to the ring and literally told Bo Dallas and R-Truth, get out the ring. It was almost making a statement to not only you, NBC Universal, but making a statement to everybody in Philly that let me be honest with you. You ain't finna watch this crap match. There are more important things that are supposed to be taking place tonight than this crap match. And guess what? You getting out my ring, I'm going to call whoever I want to call out to the ring. But the deal is, the fact that Sheamus set himself up for disaster, that literally sold it for the number 1 moment, which we're both going to get into. But my number 2, Mr. McMahon stops the show.
Well, to continue with your number 2 moment, what was great about that, it wasn't necessarily that it was going to be a bad match, but it felt natural and organic for Vince McMahon to tell people to get out of the ring. You don't see that happening, like, stop this match, quit this match, get out of my ring. You don't see that happening. So, I mean, it made it natural and organic, so it made it an exciting moment, and it's Vince McMahon. I mean, at 70 years old, he's still interesting. But like you mentioned, it's number 1 moment. Roman Reigns, Sheamus, at the end of Raw for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Roman Reigns looked good, and he showed, and he's really starting to convince me that he's not as bad as he was at the beginning of the year. That just watching the match, all the false finishes, it kind of had you on the edge of the seat. Was Roman Reigns going to get fired, or was he going to win the title? It felt like it was urgent and necessary, like you had to watch what was going to happen. And it was so well done and executed, and it made Roman Reigns look like a star, or like they are been trying to for the longest time. So I think it really helped more establish him as that top star, and then him winning the title. Just everything about the match was great. Aiden just ending the night with Roman Reigns winning the title, great moment. So that's why I put it at number 1. I think it's the undisputed number 1 moment of the week. I don't think really anything topped that this week in wrestling.
I might have to share that same opinion. And my number 1. Bell to bell, start to finish. The promo previous delivered. The deal with Stephanie McMahon delivered. The deal with Vince McMahon delivered. The match itself with Sheamus in the role of champion, and Roman Reigns in the role of challenger. Reigns stepped his game up, and he truly proved that. Granted, you can win the big one. There's a big difference between really winning the big one and putting a stamp onto it. It's not so much of Roman Reigns as it was Sheamus elevating his game to make Roman Reigns push his game and push himself forward. The Vince McMahon factor, great. League of Nations factor, great. The whole match sold it, and yeah, I gave it a 9 instead of a 10. Because it really would have had to push itself a little bit further more to get that 10 plus. But yeah, I wrote it here in my notes. Quote, "It's about time Talon stepped up in the main event and truly delivered, especially when all the chips are on the line." And I guess that's it for this segment. Oh, we got some bold predictions next.
Yeah, I'm actually going to let you send us the break. After this break, we are going to come back with some bold predictions, and we'll be back right after this.
Stick around.
This is The Godfather, and you're listening to the Power of Pro Wrestling. Oh, yeah, podcast.
And we're back with our final segment for the Power of Pro Wrestling podcast. I'm still joined by Mr. Heineken for this segment.
We got some bold predictions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like you said, we've got some bold predictions we're going to get out. And with these are, we normally do pay-per-view predictions during this time of the show, but since we've already done the Ring of Honor predictions, and last week we did the TLC predictions, we're going to kind of do our bold predictions for maybe stuff that's going to happen by the end of the year or maybe the beginning of next year. So I'm going to get us kicked off. You're going to tell me if you see this as a reality or not happening. And so I'm going to start with Brock Lesnar back on TV before the end of the year. Do you see this as a reality or not?
Okay, what's the name of this game? Bold predictions.
Bold
right?
predictions, yeah.
Well, let's truly make it bold predictions. No, I say Royal Rumble. Booyah, moneymaker. I say probably the Raw before, or probably 2 Raws before Royal Rumble next year. I do see the return. I say only the return will happen late this year if he's accepted for a slamming.
Okay, yeah. I mean, but I don't think Brock's going to be back. He's been announced to be in the Los Angeles, I think, Coliseum or something for a live event. So unless WWE last minute turns that into like a live network special, then no, he's not going to be on TV this year. Now, Slammies, I think they can always send Paul Heyman to accept the Slammy for him if he wins anything.
More than likely.
So I don't think we're going to see Brock on TV at the end of this year. I think we will see him before the Royal Rumble. So I do,
and at the Rumble.
Obviously I do think we'll see him at the Rumble. It's a big pay-per-view. It's a big payday for him. So obviously he's not going to miss out the Rumble. A Raw or 2 before, I agree. You probably will see Brock Lesnar, and I think he's already been advertised for that. So yeah, I think he's not going to be back on TV before the end of 2016.
He ain't missing no payday.
Okay, well that leads us to John Cena winning Wrestler of the Year at the Slammies.
100%. Bam! Bold prediction right there. 100%. It'll happen. I'll be surprised if it doesn't happen. If the fans decide to sway the edge and decide to vote slamming-wise, they'll probably swing that towards Roman Reigns just for the fact that he finally won the WWE title. And he finally became the fastest one to 2 WWE championship reigns other than Daniel Bryan. But I say the roles reverse because of the awesome matches he's had and also various competitors that he's had. That's why PWI had him as number 2, excuse me, in the top 500. I'm going 100% Cena gets Slammer of the Year, Wrestler of the Year.
Obviously, he's my pick for Wrestler of the Year. Now, whether the voting audience agrees with that opinion or not, that remains to be seen. I think with the Roman Reigns thing that just happened, they may vote him Wrestler of the Year just for the simple fact that he's the new Cena. So they may not vote that way, but I can definitely see John Cena winning Sammy for Wrestler of the Year.
It would be ridiculous for him not to, especially after the year he's had.
Yeah, it would be. But let's move on to another Wrestler of the Year. Daniel Bryan returning is cleared to compete. Do you think that's going to happen before the end of the year or not?
No. In my opinion, I don't think it will, because I think to make the big new year, if you have to have a new year, might as well do a new year, new return, new drive. I see Daniel Bryan returning next year rather than the rest of this year.
Well, this is a hard one for me to do the clear to compete because WWE wants to drag their feet and are concerned with him getting back in the ring and stuff. He's been cleared by multiple doctors, and his brain has been he's been told by doctors that his brain is better than a guy who doesn't have a concussion. So I don't know why WWE is waiting, but I don't think him being cleared to compete, at least not this year. Maybe hopes and prayers he'll get back next year and be able to compete. So I definitely will agree with you. It won't be this year.
But I do hope, since you did bring up the whole injury deal, I do hope, and notice I said hope instead of expect. Those are two big differences here. I do hope that he hasn't lost a lot of the fan momentum since his departure, since his two big departures after winning titles.
I don't think
that would be my concern.
I don't think he's going to lose his momentum. It's just WWE if they want to put him out there or not. But since we're talking about the championships, let's go over the TNA. Since you mentioned this in your top 5 moments, how about your bold prediction of EC3 winning the TNA title back?
If he played the role of opportunist, yes. But because Tyrus has a world title shot in his back pocket, especially after winning the Gauntlet for the Gold at Bound for Glory this year, all due respect to Matt Hardy, I'll really make the bold prediction. Either Eric Young or Lashley waltz away January 5th, the new world champion.
I'm kind of torn for this one. I definitely think EC3 will win the TNA title. They've let him go this long without being defeated. And even Bound for Glory, he wasn't the one pinned, so he's still technically unpinned or unsubmitted. So I don't feel that they're going to not let him be the TNA champion again as much as I would like to see Matt Hardy. I feel Matt Hardy got gypped, but I know why they did that for storyline reasons. And just for the simple fact, like you mentioned, Tyrus, his closest confidant, is the winner of the Gauntlet of Gold. That's just too good of a storyline to pass up. So I think EC3 will win the TNA title. So I'm going to be bold and say, yes, he will win it on January 5th.
And especially since the World Championship not only has to be defended in TNA, but it has been confirmed that TNA World title will be defended outside of Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, even though it will have all the contracts met. So it has been confirmed.
Okay, and we're going to cut this off with this one. The League of Nations, a breakup before the Royal Rumble. Do you think that's going to be a reality or not?
No. For this reason. With the Royal Rumble, it's like you said, Royal Rumble. To me, that's the key point of all of this. The Royal Rumble. I say the Royal Rumble starts to break up. That's my bold prediction.
And I definitely can agree with that point as well. I think the Royal Rumble is going to cause friction between the League of Nations and cause them to break up. I don't know if before the Royal Rumble, I'm kind of uncertain, but I think definitely after it could cause them to break up. I don't see the League of Nations to be a long-running faction. You have too many guys that need to be single stars. They don't necessarily need to be in a faction. They could work in a faction, but it just feels strange with them being in a faction.
Well, it's not like the Wyatt family, who can work together as a faction,
yeah.
And they're better as a unit compared to the League of Nations. League of Nations are better singles wrestlers than the Wyatt family are. All due respect to Luke Harper and to Bray Wyatt, who technically are the two single best superstars of that 4-man group. I think League of Nations won't last. I think Wyatt family will. That would be the big difference. I think Royal Rumble will tell the whole story.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, since we're kind of out of time, we're running over. I want to thank you, Mr. Heineken, for joining me. And they can follow you on Twitter at Chris Heineken1.
Yes, they can, but they can also follow you on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, at Robert Red Jr. Our Facebook, it's Mark Wanders85. If you want to add me as a friend, I do have a podcast set up so you guys can get the latest information regarding the podcast. I do send out tweets. And also check out our latest features on my YouTube channel. Oh, I've got a hodgepodge of stuff. Not only is it wrestling stuff, I got my Robert Dodd stuff with my co-writer, but we do have bonus content that's going to be on there for people who financially support the podcast. We have a part 1, and we just finished part 2 of a PWI article, so you guys want to stick around for that. You can tweet me, or like I said, Facebook, email me at robertredjr@aol.com for how you can get access to all this great content that Mr. Heineken just told you about. But thank you once again for being on the show, Mr. Heineken. This has been Robert Red. This has been the Power Pro Wrestling Podcast, the podcast by wrestling fans for wrestling fans. We'll catch you guys with our next podcast, which we're going to be talking Slammies. I don't think Mr. Heineken's going to be joining me for the Slammies, but I think we're going to be
We
back.
have special guests for that.
Yeah, we have a special guest for that. I'm going to confirm it before I tell you guys who my special guest is going to be. But we're going to end the year, me and Heineken, with our match of the year candidates and stuff like that. So we will catch you guys later on that note. So see you later.
Have an awesome day, ladies and gentlemen. Have an interesting one.